Now we're going to talk about paid advertising in the context of how to use it to scale your real estate investing business. So what is the case for paid lead generation? Well, a lot of the tactics that we talked about in the last section are kind of what I'll call hustle tactics, things that you have to go out and do, driving for dollars, cold calling, text message marketing. Businesses that do this right tend to have leads coming into them. I often tell people to think of themselves as a retail store. Unless there's customers coming in that store all day long, then they're going to have a difficult time surviving, depending on what kind of business you are, right? At the end of the day, customers have to come into your store. As real estate investors, I view customers coming into our store is people either calling us to say they're interested in selling their house because they received some sort of advertising, or it could be web forms that are filled out if you're doing online advertising. So essentially, customers are coming to you because you paid for advertising and maybe even paid somebody else to do that advertising for you, where you as the owner don't have to necessarily go out and drive for dollars or knock on doors or be text messaging people yourself. The leads are just coming in because you built a system, and that costs money ultimately. So that is what we're going to talk about in the paid lead generation section. So let's talk about some common types of paid lead generation, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of each. So let's talk about pay-per-click advertising. That is essentially somebody does a search for you on Google or Yahoo or Bing and is attempting to solve a problem. I need to sell my house fast. I want to sell my house for cash, things like that. So when people are searching that out, they're searching for somebody to solve their problem, and you can pay Google or Yahoo or Bing to make sure that you show up high in the rankings. Now, you have to compete against other people to show up high. It's essentially generally an auction process where the person that is willing to pay the most is the one that gets seen the most. Now, that doesn't mean that they're winning, because they may overpay for ads, and ultimately their advertising cost per deal that they get may be too high and they can't afford that. That's why people don't spend endless amounts of money. It's a game, right? Not everybody that buys things at an auction, whether it's a house or whether it is advertising, actually wins. Some people that win it are actually the losers, if you will. Pay-per-click is obviously very powerful. There aren't many things these days that I buy or major decisions that I make without doing a search online first. However, people are savvy. Sometimes people will skip below the ads and they'll look for organic results. That is, people that, we're not going to talk about SEO much, but people that rank high from an SEO perspective and spend a lot of time, most likely in our industry for sure, to show up at that level. And the reason I do that is because I know that I would rather probably give my business to somebody that's actually earned their way there than necessarily bought their way there. And that's just me. Probably most people click on the ads that are at the very top of the page. So let's talk about some pros and cons of pay-per-click. First off, it's probably not a skill set that you have. The average real estate investor for sure does not have that skill set. In order to do paid advertising online, you're generally going to have to hire an agency. Now, that's not a bad thing, but a couple of cons to mix in is you're going to pay a management fee regardless of whether your budget is $2,000 a month or $20,000 a month. And sometimes that $20,000 a month budget might be a little bit higher, but it's not 10 times the cost. So most agencies have maybe windows or ranges that from 0 to 10,000, this is your monthly fee. From 10 to 20, this is your fee. So you don't want a significant portion of your advertising budget to get eaten up by the agency management cost. Now, they are doing a job and they deserve that money, but if you're not spending enough to offset that by a tremendous amount, then a lot of your money might be wasted more to management fees. It is a crowded space. There are most major real estate investors are using pay-per-click. So that in and of itself is not a bad thing. It just is what it is. We're all competing in this business for sure. Some of the pros are obviously that who doesn't search for options to solve a major problem online? It's very common these days for people, just like I said, I do, to go online and research you or your business. Truthfully, even if you are sending direct mail or other things, they may still go online and search for you. If you are doing paid advertising and you're at least paying for your own brand names, then you might show up at the top unless somebody else is buying your brand to compete against you in your market. So paid advertising is great. It's honestly should be one of the things you're doing as you scale your business up. There really are 2 or 3 primary advertising channels that you should be doing. However, you should exhaust, one of these first. It could be started in pay-per-click. We're going to later talk about direct mail. You don't want to spend $2,000 on direct mail and $2,000 on pay-per-click. You may spend $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 on one of those channels and then layer in the second channel. Next, let's talk about TV advertising. So TV advertising is great, and it's actually had a pretty amazing resurgence in the real estate investing industry here over the past couple of years, with a couple of vendors that are enabling this for a lot of real estate investors. So TV is great, but depending on the size of your market that you're in, you may need a decent sized budget to be able to pull that off. Now, you might be surprised at how little you need to spend if you're in a mid-size market. And small markets, quite frankly, are just difficult to make TV work because you don't have a huge viewing audience, and the cost to reach that audience might be bigger than what it's worth in a small market. In mid-size and larger markets, it's definitely doable. There are hundreds of people that are using TV across the country. Now, aside from it brushing your ego a little bit that you have ads running on TV, it can be a powerful tool to give you credibility. But for most people, I would say that TV is not the first place you should go if you have $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 a month to spend on paid lead generation. In many ways, it's branding instead of direct call to action. And so it works really well in conjunction with mail and maybe even online advertising, so that if they see you on TV and they search for you online, or they see you on TV and they receive your mail, that it gives it additional credibility. If you're only doing TV and they're not receiving other direct response type advertising from you, then you may lose out on some of that potential opportunity for reaching them directly and having them reach out to you directly. Next, let's talk about radio advertising. So truthfully, I know many people that have tried this. I don't know many people that have had great luck with it. I'm not knocking it in any way. I just don't have a lot of experience in this space. But like TV, it's a medium that can reach a lot of people. At the end of the day, the biggest challenge that radio advertising has, which isn't that different from TV, is that when I watch TV at this point, I'm primarily watching Amazon Prime or Netflix or HBO or something like that, some paid channel, and I just, truthfully, personally, I don't watch network TV anymore. And from a radio perspective, same thing. I listen to podcasts, I listen to Amazon Music, and a lot of people listen to iTunes. So at the end of the day, you're competing with that terrestrial radio. So a lot of folks that I do know that have had some level of success with radio tends to be more on talk radio or other things that are unique, not necessarily just listening to music, that there are many, many other options for. Next, I want to talk about SMS marketing again in the context of outsourcing it to either virtual assistants or a service that would actually do that for you. So unlike when we talked about it in the vein of doing this yourself, you actually can scale up SMS marketing. There are companies you can hire that will send so many texts a day, or you can pay them by the hour. There are also virtual assistant services that you can pay $8, $10, $12 an hour to manage people to text on your behalf, usually using your system that you put together. So that is a way to scale up your business. You still have all the same challenges of it potentially being illegal or on the fringe of being illegal, being able to connect with people because the carriers are trying to block your messages from numbers that it doesn't recognize. The carriers are actually are pretty smart. They're obviously multi-billion dollar a year companies, and so it's easy for them to outsmart other systems that are trying to connect. So in many ways, the carrier knows, for example, if it is what's called A2P, it's an application to person versus person to person. So it's more likely to let an unknown number through if I'm texting you than if directly from my cell phone, than if I'm using some application that allows me to text thousands of people a day to connect with you. They're aware that that's coming through a system where I'm sending lots of text. So you still have all those same challenges of getting through, the same legal challenges that we talked about earlier in the context of being able to scale up your business in terms of using free lead generation techniques. But where this is different here is you can effectively pay a service. So I definitely have friends, people that I know that might have a team of 3, 4, 5, even 10 people that are text message marketing on behalf of you as the owner. The way it works is they typically generate a lead, they warm it up to a certain point, and then they pass it over to an acquisitions manager or maybe a lead manager that's going to kind of take it from there, because many folks that are using outsourced SMS marketers are virtual assistants, maybe overseas folks that can churn through a lot of numbers but may not be the best person to connect with from an acquisition standpoint. So pass it over to somebody that can handle that process a little more smoothly. So there's some pros and cons of outsourcing the SMS. In the context of being able to outsource it and you get out of the way so you don't have to do it, it's a great method. In the context of, is it legal? Are there challenges? Are the challenges going to get worse? Those are the real challenges that we have. This is probably a dying channel ultimately. So what will you do next? And if you are doing a lot of this now, I'd encourage you to think about, what will you do next? You can't just cut off a channel and not advertise and not make any changes. You're going to have to refocus your paid advertising towards something else that will work for you. Next, let's talk about outsourced cold calling. So similar to what we just talked about in texting, there are opportunities for you to outsource to effectively a call center where you have a number of different people that are outbound cold calling on your behalf. Now, it could be one person, it could be 10 people, it could be 100 people. But at the end of the day, it's a way for you to stop doing it and you can pass that off to somebody else. There are a tremendous amount of cold calling and outsourcing VA services that have popped up over the last 4 to 5 years that are glad to do this for you. Typically are paying them an hourly rate per person. And so it's very common for people to have 3, 4, 5 cold callers. If you are going to do this, again, you still have the same challenges we've talked about here a few times, which are that there's some legal issues with cold calling people that didn't request to be contacted in the first place. So always make sure you stay safe legally. I'm not an attorney, so don't take legal advice from me. However, it is a way for you to scale up. I will tell you, it's kind of a pro tip of folks that go down this path. I would not dabble with one person. But if you only have one person that's doing your cold calling and it's not working out, you can't tell whether it's the person or whether it's your system or whether it's the technique. If you have multiple people, say 3 to 5 cold callers, there inevitably will be some that outperform others. And if you only have one, then you're in a position of almost ensuring that if you have a bad one, you're going to be turned off by the whole channel instead of just saying, well, that person isn't the right person, let's replace that person. Now, one of the benefits of using an outsourced service is that if somebody is not working out, you can generally replace them in a very short period of time, perhaps the next day. If you have people in your office that are doing this, then it's way harder to backfill that role and find that person. This is a burnout job. It's the type of job that people are told cussed at all day long when they contact people that didn't ask to be contacted. So one of the benefits of using an outside service or a virtual assistant service that focuses on cold calling is that they can replace those people way faster than what you'll be able to do because, by the way, that's their business and you have an entire other business to run. Recruiting and HR is probably one of the things that you like the least in your business, and truthfully right now in this day and age is one of the hardest things to do. So there's some pros and cons there of cold calling. So next let's talk about direct mail. Direct mail is, well, you know what it is. It's letters and postcards and it's contacting people through the U.S. Post Office generally. But there are a lot of benefits to it, and I want to dive into that a little bit more in the next section. I'll kind of go into a little bit of a deeper dive in direct mail. But for now, it's essentially finding a list that you could market to, and we'll talk about lists a little bit in a bit. And it's sending letters or postcards to try to reach the people that are the types of houses you want to target, or maybe it's the type of distress that you're going after.